This is the moment when the supposedly dead killer comes back to life for one last scare. For one last scare. For one last scare.
It's a whale of an island. That's not a bad joke. Its lord and its master is this handsome bloke. Oh, the most remarkable.
Where's Blake? Where'd he go? Maybe he went with Sabrina. Where did it go? Welcome to The Last Scare, a home for all horror nerds to come together and talk about their favorite feel-good genre. And tonight we're talking about the most feel-good movie we've seen in a while, Skinamarink.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this one shook me.
Yeah.
This was not a feel-good movie at all. It really genuinely scared me, and I have a hard time finding movies that do scare me. Basically nothing scares me, but this shook me to my core.
It really did make me feel like a kid again. It felt like a nightmare as a kid when you would hear something scary, or your imagination would kind of take over and it would just freak you out. It's so embarrassing. I remember hiding in my closet when the Paranormal Activity 2 trailer would come on. Because you would see her standing in the doorway in the trailer, and it freaked me out so much. I would run to my closet so I didn't have to see it.
Oof.
This is a visceral nightmare of a movie.
Paranormal Activity 2 is probably the first horror movie I ever saw.
Wow.
That's like my shining example of basically the last time a movie really scared me.
Mm-hmm.
When I saw it, I was like 14 or something. Mm-hmm. I got to give a little note first for anyone who hasn't seen this yet. I highly recommend seeing it in a theater. You've got to really be immersed in this one. We saw it twice, and we had two really different experiences. Basically, the first time, it felt like it was just us.
Because we were super close, and they sat in the very last row, and that was it.
Yeah, we were in the second row, and there was one guy sitting in the row behind us, and he left just a few minutes into this movie.
Mm-hmm.
And at the second showing, a bunch of people walked out before the movie was over.
It was rough. Yeah, shout out to Corbin at AMC, because after our watch, it was us. The guy that was behind us left super early, and then it was theater workers, and we sat and talked with them immediately after.
The sound was up decently loud, to where you could hear everything, even though most of the audio was just hissing and humming. So it was just a really scary, immersive experience. But the second time we saw it, the crowd was full, and the sound was turned lower, and the movie was way less effective.
Yeah, actually, we had a particularly rough time. Someone took our seats. People were going in and out of the door, taking phone calls. A couple next to us got into a fight. Then we had people in front of us came in late and were talking out loud in the beginning of the movie. Like he was facing her, talking out loud as he was sitting down when the movie was playing.
That does not work for this movie.
But my brother next to me, we took him to the second showing because I was like, "You've got to see this," and he kept like he was trying to be quiet because you could hear all the ambience in the theater. You could hear everyone rustling their food packages and stuff. My brother was munching popcorn next to me, and it was going on for a couple minutes, and I felt like such an asshole, but I leaned over and I said, "Dude, you got to stop eating popcorn." It's because he was ruining the experience for himself. It's because I could tell this movie wasn't scaring him, because we were just so removed from it and it was quiet, and the movie just doesn't work like that. So if you can see it in a theater, please do. Sit up close. Sit up as close as you're comfortable. If you have to watch it at home, which it should be on Shudder this week,
The second.
watch it with headphones on. Turn it up. Just really listen to all the noise. The jump scares are gonna really, really get you, but I think this movie is worth getting scared by.
Yeah. Blake, you saw it in the theater, right?
Yes.
What was your experience like?
It was really good because I wasn't able to catch it at one of my local ones. A friend of mine texted me like, "Do you want to see this?" He ended up not being able to make it, so I asked a different friend who had no idea what this was. And we drove kind of out of our way to go see it, but I'm like, this isn't low budget horror movie that's getting a lot of buzz. I know it's going to be worth seeing in a theater. And luckily there were probably 4 people most in that theater, and it was loud. Like you said about the audio, it was really turned up.
I want to know the stats about how many refunds they're giving for this
Yeah,
movie, because this is not for everyone.
This really is an experimental horror, and this isn't going to be for everyone. And you have to you have to let yourself be immersed in it at first, and not a lot of people are going to want that because it's not going to spoon feed you anything.
Oh yeah.
Whatsoever. The plot is something that you have to piece together yourself, which I personally loved. It's one of the things I loved about this movie. There's nothing of like a traditional movie that happens with this. It kind of breaks all the movie rules. You don't really see the characters. So it takes a risk and it really pays off. I mean, it was made for $15K and it's at 1.5 in the box office now. And for me, seeing indie horror, first of all, be this successful is amazing and inspirational. I love it so much, especially when we had Terrifier 2 last year. But on top of that, to see general audiences pack a theater on a Saturday night to see an experimental indie low-budget horror movie felt really special. I never thought I would ever see that. And it feels like such a special time for the genre. I really do. I really am fortunate to see it while it's happening.
I felt really lucky we got showings in our theater because in our small city, we only have 2 movie theaters, and they're a Regal and an AMC, so we don't have indie theaters. We basically just go to the House of Kidman for everything.
Yeah.
Blake, how did this movie make you feel?
Like you, I don't get scared at a lot of horror movies, but this movie also, like what you said, Jayla, made me feel like a kid again. It literally places you in the shoes of children, having to look up at everything, and you're face to face with Legos and these cartoons that are playing on TV, and the biggest worry of you is, should I go upstairs in my own house? The fact that is the biggest obstacle to overcome in this movie kind of speaks volumes as to what it's really about. And if you have any fear of the dark, or just being alone, or your parents are gone and you don't know where they went, they just left, because as a kid you're always scared of them leaving you in the middle of the night for some reason, like if they just have to dip out for something. And for this movie to kind of encase you in such silence as opposed to the ambience, I will admit 20 minutes or so into the movie I was kind of like getting a little tired. I was like, where's this even going? And then the first direct scare happens in the bedroom when the kid's checking on dad. And without giving too much away, that's when my eyes were glued to the screen. And I was like, where's this movie going to go? I need to know what's going to happen next. And from then on, it kind of becomes what Hitchcock said, that waiting for the bang. Like you're shown the gun and the audience is kind of on that hook. And once that gun goes off, you've lost them. And that's it. You can't really get that back. And this movie knows that. So this whole movie at one point shows you the gun and just keeps that as long as it possibly can. I think that was the dread of this movie. Because at a point, certain things are happening even towards the end where I'm actually like, what's going to happen? Like something's going to get me. When is that bang going to come? And that's what makes this movie scary and fun to actually get immersed in. It was a rare horror movie, I'd say.
Yeah, I described it as paranormal activity from a kid's point of view. Just a lot of like dread and confusion, and just it lingered with me. Like it felt heavy walking out. You know, it felt like I filled with dread.
Something about the tone of this movie, the way it's shot, it looks like it could be a found footage movie because it's got that grainy VHS aesthetic. But you're really seeing a lot of different perspectives. So we talk about horror adjacent movies a lot, and I think this movie is found footage adjacent. It's not strictly found footage. It's not like, look at this horrible thing we found, but the way that we're watching it with the grain over it, it feels very voyeuristic. It does, if you can get really immersed in it, it does feel really real because it really puts you in Kevin and Kaylee's position. Like you've been saying, the fear of the dark, this movie made me feel like a kid again, but just the parts where I'm scared. Just that childhood fear that I haven't felt since I was a child. I've been feeling it again. I've been feeling uncomfortable and scared in my own house at night. And it's got under my skin. We saw this a week ago for the first time, and I've been able to think about nothing else for the past week. This movie shook me.
Yeah, and right before we watched it, there was a intro that the director put up on YouTube.
When the film is over and you go home, go to bed, and turn off the lights, I guarantee you are going to have a difficult time falling asleep. Guaranteed.
It was true. It was true.
Yeah, it's true because they know there's I don't want to get into too much spoiler territory, but all of us have these dark corners in our house or our room, and when you're laying there in your bed trying to fall asleep, that's when it comes back to you, is when you're like, oh shit, there's a dark corner over there, or I just left my closet open, and you're just trying to look to see if you can see those grainy eyes kind of poking out in there to see if anything's with you. And I tried to play it off. I got home, I'm like, it wasn't that scary. And I'm turning on every light as I walk by.
Yeah, same. I have lights in my room that I do not turn off. Like I have my string lights I keep on the last few days. I'm just like, maybe I don't want to sleep in like the total dark right now. But like it really helps that this was filmed in Kevin Edward Ball's childhood home.
His actual childhood home.
Yeah, his childhood home he filmed this in.
I couldn't do that. That would scare me too much to make that.
Yeah, that takes that really, I think it really helped him make something that just is so universally terrifying.
I hate it. 5 stars.
It's a very special movie. So inventive, like the idea that it brings up, the idea that he is presenting.
Something I appreciate is that he edited the movie himself, and I think based on the way this movie is paced and the way it cuts from scene to scene, I think he had to cut this movie himself. It's something I really appreciate about a director, because editing is basically how I got started in my interest in film. I was editing videos with my boy Dylan, and that's how I got started. And so when I watch a Kevin Smith movie or a Ty West movie and it says edited by Kevin Smith or edited by Ty West, I'm like, mad respect to that. But I think it was because it was a low budget movie with very small crew. But also the fact that he could take that kind of creative control and do it himself, because he did have such a specific vision. So within this editing, obviously there's a lot of sound design, and basically there's this hum over the whole movie, and every time it cuts to a different hum or a different hiss.
Oh yeah.
Lots of hissing and humming. And when we saw the showing with the volume up, every little cut was just making us just kind of just jolt just a little bit. And even though there's only like 4 or 5 real jump scares, there's so many little jumps. I found that the jump scares in this movie were really, really effective. And I think that's because in a lot of horror movies we see these days, basically the movie's building tension, and then we have something make a loud sound, and we go, but it's usually a fake out. Like, we usually don't have anything to be afraid of when there's a jump scare, and it actually acts to relieve tension and make us kind of laugh it off and not.
Those little checkpoints.
Yeah. But with this movie, the jump scares made it so much worse. I find that they really follow through and filled me with more dread. I think at this point, we're going to go ahead and say, if you haven't seen the movie, we really recommend you go see it if you're into horror. And so from here on out, we're going to go ahead and move into spoiler territory.
Yeah, I definitely recommend seeing it.
There's the Kaylee jump scare where her mouth has been taken away. That's really the first explicitly scary image.
Yeah, I think that came before the toy.
Oh,
You did.
the phone jump scare is right at the end, and that one, it's on site if I ever see one of those toy phones in the real world.
The way they played off that jump scare was brilliant, with just the eyes, and you hold on those stupid eyes in the darkness for what felt like 5 minutes until it's just like, oh, it's a toy, we're out of the woods, and then you get hit with another something.
We like jumped out of our skins.
We covered our ears. I haven't covered my ears in a movie since I was a kid, since I was scared. But that phone ringing was so loud, and at the first showing,
it stared into my soul.
It felt like 5 minutes of ringing. Like we covered our ears for the rest of the movie.
Wait, do you remember if the phone happens before the repeated blood splatter or after?
Yeah, that's before. The blood is like way end.
The IMDb synopsis had things like definitely in the wrong order. Also, they took some creative liberties with their interpretation, because the last line basically says, Kevin revealed to have survived the events of the film, which I don't know about that. I don't know about that.
I don't know if there's much survival going on.
This is my favorite part of the movie, because I don't think there's a right or wrong answer as opposed to what happened, and that's why I love experimental, which in layman terms, for anyone that doesn't know why we keep throwing the term experimental, is there's no clear narrative. You have characters, more or less, you have a basic story. Any detail beyond that is kind of subjective and up to you. How I've taken this entire thing, I like, when it comes to movies, I like to take things at as much face value as possible, because that's why we like movies, is it's not realistic and it's very exaggerated, or at least that's kind of how I like movies. So with this movie, I do genuinely think there's a demon in this kid's house, and it's just simply screwing with them. And I think that's the scariest thing. It doesn't want anything. And even I think at one point the kid says, so like, how'd you do that? Just making the shit disappear. And he said, I can do anything.
Yeah.
I think it is that case of, you have already lost. Like, you have lost this entire time. And he's just, he knows where you are. He just keeps saying, like, I want to play, because he knows where you're hiding. He's just like, I got all day. And so do you. Come out. So the entire ending to this movie is really just this demon finally like, okay, I've stared at my food, I've taken the pictures, I've put this off long enough, I'm eating. And it is just the longest possible montage you can have of this kid suffering, which I think that's why it kind of stuck with me, is I was like, oh, I literally watched this kid's nightmare, but he's living it out endlessly. And I think that's more of my personal fear, is just kind of being stuck in a nightmare endlessly on repeat. And like, Jayla, that moment you mentioned specifically with the blood, that was arguably the scariest part for me, because you think when it's in reverse, the blood going, it gets reversed, the blood going, and as it's being reversed, you hear the demon laughing normally. So it's just this kid being tormented over and over, and the demon's just having a ball with that.
I hate this movie.
Yeah.
We have a little name for the entity. We just call it Skinny because there's, no name given, last shot of the movie. What's your name? We don't have a name for it. So we just call it Skinny. You think Skinny is a demon? Do you think it represents something? Like, how do you interpret what this movie is about?
The way I interpret it was Skinny being this entity that is just playing. Like, there's this really dark and twisted curiosity about Skinny throughout the movie that's just freaky. Super freaky. For instance, replaying the clip, which we'll revisit that later, but replaying the clip of what is it called? What was it?
Presto Changeo.
Presto Changeo.
It's a classic cartoon.
Yeah.
You're talking about the clip of the bunny making itself disappear with the.
Yeah, there's this really twisted curiosity that we see from Skinny throughout the movie, and it makes me nauseous just to think about. But I picture it as just this malevolent force that's really curious. Also, if you pay attention to the cartoons, I feel like the cartoons throughout are saying something about the story.
For sure.
Towards the beginning, there is one where there is like a giant spider trapping people in its web, and that's another thing that I think that's how another way that I interpret Skinny is just trapping this family in its web and just messing around with it because it can. Yeah, right after the spider bit, this is before things got super bad. Way before things got super bad, because the movie starts off kind of warm as far as like color, like literal warmth. If you look in the corner, a spider is on the wall.
There is. That makes sense. Yeah, I didn't make that connection. The way I interpret this movie is kind of vague. I have some loose ideas. I think I hate this. This makes my skin crawl, but I think Skinny is the mother. To me, that is like worst case scenario, because I think a lot of this movie is about maybe neglect or maybe child abandonment or something, or maybe the way a kid feels during a divorce. They're looking for dad, and they say maybe dad went with mom. And so mom is already gone. Mom was the first one to go, even though we do see what is probably mom sitting on the side of the bed.
Yeah.
That just creeps me out. During the look under the bed scene, when Kaylee is going, and it seems like dad is telling her look under the bed, and then she comes back up, and then there's someone else on the other side of the bed, and it looks like a woman. It looks like mom. I think mom is like maybe possessed by Skinny. Skinny seems to make everything in the house disappear, but the mother is the first thing, because they're like, maybe dad went with mom. So mom was gone first, and I think mom becomes Skinny. He does have that curiosity you mentioned, but he does have this sort of parental attitude, because he basically punishes Kaylee for not doing as she was told, and he does want to play with them. He also says something about wanting to protect them, and I think Skinny definitely represents a parent of some sort.
Ooh. Breaking down the scene that you just mentioned, because you kind of like lit up a bunch of stuff in my brain. When we start, few things I'm going to break down. When we start the film, I think Skinny is already there, and I think Skinny is the reason why Kevin fell down the stairs, because I don't think he was sleepwalking. I think Skinny told him to.
Told him to, yeah.
Yeah, I think
he seems to influence him a lot.
Yeah, I think Skinny told him to. And then you hear the dad on the phone with the mom telling her that what happened. And then as soon as that happened is when things really start to get worse and progress. But that scene in particular, there's a few things that stood out to me. The mom has some dialogue that says something similar to, your dad and I love you very much. Please close your eyes. And that first bit kind of sounds like something that like you would hear a mother or a parental figure say in like during a divorce, or like when there's an argument, and like reassuring Kaylee, because it's from Kaylee's POV, literally.
Yeah.
And then she's gone after the closing her eyes. Kaylee closed her eyes, and the mother's gone. But I do want to make a note about how you hear the mother say, "There's somebody here," And when Kaylee looks away, there's also, this is the first jump scare, there's also, no, second jump scare. You see something grab, or what looks like it's grabbing the door, and it cuts immediately. And you hear bones cracking, is what I was trying to get to.
I think that's Skinny taking over Mom in some capacity. The prevailing theory online is that Kevin is in a coma after falling down the stairs, and this is basically his like coma dream.
Oh,
What's your take on that, Blake?
that's freaky. Similar. Mine is I'm in the nightmare dream coma state right now when it comes to how this movie is being perceived, and why I'm kind of hung up on that is we are addressed at the end. And that's where I kind of feel like we're either living or watching a nightmare or a coma dream, whatever you would call that. And I mean, it does just abruptly end. So I believe that's either a good sign or a bad sign that someone woke up, or there's nothing left to dream. If that's the popular theory that it's that he is in a coma. My interpretation of this is very basic, and if I came up with like the parental explanation or anything, I would be lying. Like I did, as like I don't want to lie. I did take it as like we are watching someone's or living our own kind of nightmare, and that's why it scared me. I think it got personal at the end, and I hated it. I was addressed directly in my dread.
Home becomes your worst nightmare, and home becomes foreign, and home becomes like you don't have your comfort anymore.
Home transforms so much in this movie because everything's disappearing, everything's sticking to the wall, everything's turning upside down. I mean, he's walking on the ceiling. It's confusing whether we're looking at a reversal of gravity or if we're looking at the floor. You can't even tell what's the floor and what's the ceiling by the end of the movie. With all the toys piled up, are they in the ceiling or is this the floor upside down? It gets really confusing, and there's no concrete answers here.
And it is, there's something that makes it even worse because we're watching kids. We're watching this from 4-year-olds' perspectives. I'm scared as an adult, and like to watch this from a kid's perspective. And also, I wanted to make a note about how like they react to the situation like a child would react. They go downstairs to watch TV and find comfort. They couldn't call 911, and that's like the TV was the comfort. And as the movie went on, we saw less of the TV, and by the end, I was begging for the TV to come back.
The only reason my TV is still a comfort to me now is because it's not a 4x3 TV sitting on the floor. Mine is like, a modern TV,
it's a nice TV
on the wall. Thanks. And whenever I'm watching it, I'm not thinking about Skinamarink because I'm not thinking of creepy television sitting on the carpet floor in the 90s. That old TV, hell, even one in our intro, wink.
God, I don't know, guys. It's just like I feel so deeply uncomfortable whenever I think about this movie or whenever I watch it, but also I love it.
It's just the most visceral experience of fear I've ever seen in a movie. Like,
yeah,
throughout this whole conversation, I've had chills on my arms. My hair has been raising. It really, really bothers me a lot.
It's mostly how this movie's presented and like the specific scenes that work because of how the director wanted to go about this movie. Like the choice to put that grain on it and to have just the random shots of shit around the house, because that wouldn't work. Like high quality camera, or I mean, like it is shot on a high quality camera and they added the grain to it, but you know what I mean.
I was talking about that hallway scene where all the toys are piled up.
Right.
This was very much a turning point in the movie. This is where we are definitely in the third act. And so I think it's this shot where it says 572 days, which we assume just means they've been in this house for 572 days. So for those of you who don't know, there is a proof of concept short film made by Kyle Edward Ball, the director. It's called Heck. It's on YouTube. It's about 28 minutes long. and basically it's a proof of concept for Skinamarink, but it's different, and it kind of lends some of the ideas of what you're going to get in Skinamarink, but also I think it kind of is more explicit in what it's about.
Spoiler alerts for Heck, but in Heck, they take it to the extreme. The son and the mother are in there for over 18,000 days. Sleeps. They use sleep, so that's what a kid would say. And like, that's how a kid would.
Yeah.
Like, well, like 7 sleeps, so Christmas. Over 18,000 days. Just, no, thank you.
At the end, the kid says, "Mom, I think we're in hell." And also earlier he says,
"Oh no!" That's
he says
line.
This line is so fucked up.
God.
But the kid says, early in Heck, the kid says, "I'm sorry, I got cancer." And so basically, the kid and the mom are dead and they're in hell. And so if Skinamarink is coming from that, then basically home has become hell for them, and maybe he is dead, maybe it's a coma thing. I think the coma theory kind of gets put on a lot of movies. I think that's just a very common recurring theory for a lot of movies.
And
The Walking Dead being a big one.
the reason it doesn't work for me, I have a few reasons. First, when the father is on the phone with who I presume is the mother, because who else would he be calling? He did take Kevin to the doctor, and Kevin got stitches, and they said he was fine. And also, having a scene that is very blatantly from Kaylee's perspective. I really don't. I don't want to view this movie as Kaylee not really being there, and Kaylee not being a real character that's experiencing this with him.
572 days. We have the hallway. It seems to be endless. It just gets longer and longer. And it was at this point in the movie, I thought this was the last shot of the movie. I thought it was ending. And at this point, they hadn't really done, basically all the biggest stuff happens right at the end. But this hallway shot, I thought it was the ending, and I felt let down. It gets really quiet here, and it just keeps going back and back and back. It felt like an ending, and I didn't want it to be. I felt like, no, I need more from this movie. If it ends like this, I'm going to be a little disappointed. And then everything else happens, and by the end, I was like, I think maybe I would have liked that hallway ending. I wouldn't be thinking about this movie so much afterward. I would have been like, oh, I didn't get it. But those last few scenes, I feel like I do get it.
At one point, and there's something about upstairs specifically is like where the is the evilest for whatever reason. There's something about it's upstairs.
It's where mom and dad's room is.
Oh my god. Ugh. But I forgot what part of the ending this is, if it's before 572 or not. But Skinny says, "Come upstairs." Kevin goes upstairs and opens the door, and like you see from Kevin's point of view, and it's higher up, and then like the door, it gets further and further away. I feel like Kevin was being picked up by Skinny and being like carried away.
We see a wooden toy house tilted upside down.
Mm-hmm.
One of the next shots later, we see that house in a void. I know that one of Kyle Edward Ball's rules for shooting this movie was that we never see the outside of the house.
Or maybe like it's not even their house anymore. It's like a replica of their house. They're taken to a different dimension.
I think that could represent the house to Skinny. Like for us, to the kids, that's a toy house. But to Skinny, the house is his toy house. And he plucked this whole... I mean, we know he can just take anything he wants, just make it disappear. I think he did that to the whole house. And the way he's fucking with these parents wherever they went, God rest their soul, and the kids, he has taken their, as with all of us, their happy place, their comfort is their house, where you live, nothing bad ever happens to you in your house, and you're no longer safe there. He's taking your doors, your windows, so you don't know kind of where your house begins and ends. It's kind of up to him. And that Skinny can be seen as like, he's the kid that we're following in this story, as opposed to the genuine children we watch play. Skinny is this childish demon thing that is using using the kids as his little Lego guys. This whole house is something that he has constructed and built over however many days that he has been doing this for, and he is having a ball. And that house that we see floating is kind of how he views this house right here. It's another thing for him to do when it comes to his endless abyss of people to torment for literally ever. Okay, I mean, they have lost. They're not going back.
Yeah.
It is just it's something that they're going to be stuck in until he gets sick of them and doesn't kill them. Just lets them off into a void.
Take another point off that and build off of that. Earlier in the movie, we see Presto Changeo and we see him replay this very specific scene of the rabbit going like that and repeating it and repeating it. And then later on, we don't see anything, but you see a little bit of blood, and then you hear a huge crunch and a lot of blood. And like I think that like he's trying to reenact that motion with
He's
Kevin.
crunching the kid. That's her theory, that he's crunching this kid.
I just feel like the visuals of that cartoon are so strong, and the way the blood is splattering, I feel like there's no other way. He's a curious, awful demon, and he wants to reenact this specific clip that caught
He's a kid.
attention.
He's watching his cartoons and he's playing with his toys.
Yeah, he wants to recreate the scene.
And the way I know you're right, the way I know your theory is right about this is because there's not a lot of looping in this movie, but there's a point where we see the cartoon Presto Changeo, and it's probably a VHS tape or something, but it looks like it stops, and then it kind of loops and it plays over a few times. I think that shot is from Skinny's point of view. I think we're seeing his perspective there, and I think he's watching it. He's getting the ideas. When we see the blood splatter on the ceiling or floor, from my memory, that's the only other time that it loops like that.
Yeah.
It loops and it plays 3 or 4 times like the cartoon did.
Exactly. It's a setup.
So that gives me the ick, like, very strongly. I hate this movie.
Yeah.
I hate this movie so much. It was very good.
I hate this movie so much. I can't wait to watch it again.
It was effective.
It was deeply effective. I wanted to see it a third time before doing this, but I wasn't able to swing it. And honestly, I'm just creeped out enough already. I'm good.
It's such a mean-spirited movie, too. The phone, for example, Blake, when after Kevin put a knife in his eye, you suddenly hear a 911 call, and Kevin's a smart kid because he catches on, and the phone turns out to be that little shit stupid phone, and he thought it was like Skinny made it look a real phone, and that's when he brings up like, you know,
I can do anything.
Yeah.
He turns the home phone into the toy phone.
He turned the toy phone into the home phone, other way around. And then when Kevin caught on, it turned back to the toy phone. It was never the home phone to begin with.
Ah.
The entire thing was Skinny messing with him in the first place. How did you interpret those few scenes, Blake?
Yeah, no, the same way. He was given that little bit of hope, which is so much worse. He was just like, this is part of the torment. I'll give you a real phone, I'll let you talk to someone, and then it's, no, you're talking to this freaky toy, by the way. Those uninviting little smiles on children's toys. It's just something about that.
We were putting together notes and our thoughts, and like he was trying to find a full like type out of the plot. And I was like, oh, I just saw a link, and he was using my MacBook, so I tried to airdrop it, and I thought he would have to accept it, but it just pulled up. It just opened the tab, and at the very top was the phone.
I got jump scared by the phone again, by her.
Oh my god.
I'm really sorry.
And for anybody wondering why Sabrina's not here, I simply did what we did. I explained what this movie is about, certain shots that take place, and she's like, I'm good. I don't want to see this movie. I think Cam got in her head too much, just like, this movie's sticking with me. She's like, She's like, I will not sleep for weeks if I see this movie.
I'm so curious, though, now to know how she would respond to it, because...
I know. It has to be something to be seen in person, so maybe maybe I'll swing it if it's in the theater in our area somehow.
I don't think she could watch it by herself.
No, I wouldn't
No.
suggest that for her.
Blake, do you have a theory on what exactly is happening with the blood splatter?
I always imagined a really boring, just the creature slash the kid, and he just keeps looping it. Like it's a fatal wound, but he's just letting that kid relive it. I love Jayla's theory that it's literally him getting crushed.
The thing is, you hear crunching and you hear a crunch. Ah! Boom.
Yeah, the yell is what did it for me.
And he calls out mommy. And that feeds into my theory that Skinny is mommy. I don't think he's calling for mommy to come save him. I think he's saying, mommy, stop.
You could also look at it, if I want to work my theory into this, that Skinny is just simply choosing to look like his mom. Like kind of a Coraline kind of thing, like a really distorted, just monster version. I mean, your house is your prison, your tormentor is your mom. That's
If their parents were split and mom didn't live in the house anymore, I absolutely hate that.
I think about my nightmares as a kid because I actually had frequent nightmares as a kid, which is kind of why I got into horror. It's how I get it all out. I have to see as much of it as possible to kind of counteract it. And my parents were often the monsters of my dreams. But specifically, I'm with my real parents, and I see a doppelganger, if you will, of my parent walk by. And just the thought of, because I have a specific nightmare where I hear someone breaking in, I go into my parents' room, like someone's coming in and the door's open, and the person that walks by is my mom, heading towards my room. So I know whatever this thing was, it was going to fuck with me first and pretend to be a familiar face, a comfortable face, and then is when it starts to do whatever it was originally intending to do. So
I don't know KEB's like relationship with his parents, so I don't know if he is basically riffing on his own childhood fears, but basically this movie could be effective for anyone who has a hard relationship with their parents, because you could interpret it that way. But also the reason it's scary for me is the exact opposite. I have a great relationship with my mother, and the thought of her being anything less than loving, my mom turning into something like this, that is the scariest concept I could think, because my mom is a very comforting presence for me, and Skinny is the least comforting presence I've encountered in probably 12 years.
Can we watch something happy?
Kaylee's there. She asks, can we watch something happy? And this makes me wonder if the story is strictly linear, because throughout most of the movie, I really think it's happening in order. But the way we interpret the blood splatter is that's Kevin being killed. But at the end, he's talking to this faint face, which is really ruining my life right now.
Well, to be fair, I didn't mean to cut you off, but to be fair, he says mommy because Skinny reverses it before killing him again and leaves him there, and he says mommy. So he just lived through that.
Someone interpreted it as a sleepover that this kid was having, which kind of lends to this person calling the mom, like the mom not really being there. I never thought of it like that. I thought these were siblings.
But they were talking about it. They Kevin says, maybe mom went with dad, and Kaylee says, I don't want to talk about mom.
Yeah, there's that.
Yeah, that too. I actually was scared of sleepovers as a kid. That kind of gets in my head. I never wanted to leave home, which I think that's also why this movie stood out to me, because home is my sanctuary. I've never really wanted to leave. I've never wanted to stay overnight with friends, parents, even other family. I was just such a homebody, so to have that flipped into my personal hell is it's pretty scary.
It's terrifying. Towards the end, I remember I wanted it to end. That's what I kept thinking. This is getting to be a lot. I just want it to be over. I want the nightmare to be over. In my head, the last 20 minutes, I was, okay, can this be done now?
Yeah, we get that jump scare with the phone, and we plugged our ears.
Yeah,
but then with the last shot, when you see the face just very slowly kind of emerging from the darkness, I started plugging my ears there, because I thought that was going to be a big jump scare, and
Oh yeah, I was like,
I kept it plugged until it said the end. Except it said the end, and I still didn't believe it. I didn't trust it. I kept my ears plugged.
The lights went up.
When the lights in the theater went up and the screen was clearly off, I can't say I relaxed afterward. It's been hard to sleep for a week.
Yeah.
But I was definitely relieved that the movie was over.
I let out like a deep sigh of relief. And it's really such a brilliant way to end it, because this entire time you're staring at the dark and your eyes are playing tricks on you because you're trying to see if something's there. And at the very end, something is there.
Hate that a lot.
At the very end, you finally see something.
Strongly hate that.
Yeah. And it's just not that you know something's there. And it doesn't answer any questions. It just says, go to sleep.
I can't go to sleep now.
I'm glad they never caved and shown anything that would have to do with is that the demon's hand, or is that anything visibly noticeable about that? Because I know we're all picturing the worst, what the scariest could be to us.
People are going to fill in the blanks to what's scariest to them.
Yeah.
He gives you just enough that it's generally scary, but then everyone else is going to be personalized to them what it is.
This was horror Mad Libs.
Pick an object. Knife.
Oh, no, don't you dare.
The stupid toy phone.
Put the blank in your blank. Go to blank. What's your blank? I don't want to talk about blank. I'm filling in that blank with Skinamarink. I think I'm done.
You think we're wrapped?
What else do we have to talk about? Can we be done? I'm scared.
Can we be done?
I did find a tweet where they brought up the final, or not the final shot, but the jump scare with the no eyes and no face, and showed other shots of distorted faces in horror movies that are genuinely scary. So.
Yeah, there's one that we'll be watching soon on that list.
Oh, what?
I saw that link, Lake Mungo. Yeah, I know.
I haven't seen it, so I am scared. I was excited, now I'm scared.
It's good. It's one of those hidden gems that a lot of horror fans recommend. If you haven't seen Lake Mungo, you got to go check that out.
I think it'll be a good follow-up for Skinny.
Yeah, it's another good one that'll stick with you. Do either of you like Mike Flanagan?
I just started Hill House
for the first time
2 nights ago.
Okay,
I've seen the first 2 episodes. It's been a tonal shift. It's not it's not under my skin yet, because going from Skinamarink to this just very highly produced Netflix show, I'm not quite into it, but I'm gonna stick with it. I know I'm gonna enjoy it.
It's gonna take you'll give it to episode 4 or 5, and then you'll.
There's something in Lake Mungo that Mike Flanagan loved, and he was really inspired by, and it's his breakdown of it is really interesting, and how he reflects his homage to it, and how he kind of personalizes it in his own project.
Oh, I know what you're talking about.
Very cool. Yeah.
Oh my
We talked
God.
about it on that 101 Scariest Movie Moments on Shudder, and something in Lake Mungo is on it.
I never made that connection before.
Yeah.
Oh my God, that makes so much sense. I love Mike Flanagan.
Lake Mungo is found footage adjacent, right?
It is found footage.
Oh, okay.
Full-blown fan footage.
Stop trying to make found footage adjacent happen. It's never going to happen.
I think Skinamarink fits it. I'm excited to see what you do with this edit.
Are you going to be okay to do this edit?
I can't do it alone. Can't do it at night in my house. Get out.
I think Cam was right about being done talking about this. Thanks for watching The Last Scare, and just like Stu,
I'll be right back.